This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of the rising stars in Alabama politics, young State Senator Wes Kitchens from what I call the Sand Mountain area of Alabama. Pristine lakes, beautiful country, very Republican, very conservative area of the state, but also very affluent area of the state. Has pretty high income level, and Wes is born and raised there, wasn't you, Wes?
I was, yes, sir.
Born and raised right there. And now, let's tell folks where Marshall County is. I know this we're on now. I'm so used to doing Montgomery politicians. By the way, I want to have you on every year because I have the Montgomery senators on. I have Kirkhatcher and Will Barfoot and Reed Ingham in the House,
yes,
and Clyde Chambliss. And I now have branched out to get, because I'm aware that people watch us on YouTube now.
Yes, sir.
When I first started doing this show 15 years ago here at the Rosa Parks building in downtown Montgomery, my viewing audience was just Montgomery and the River region and the Wiregrass part of the state. But now I'm all over the state with YouTube.
Well, I know I've seen your show some up in North Alabama myself. So.
Well, it's gotten the people watch it, but so I'm going to have to deviate and have more than just Montgomery senators. So it'd be real good for my viewers to have other than just, they're probably tired of seeing Barfoot, you know, every time. You know, that's one of the things that's talking about that. And you've learned it because you've been in the legislature a little while now. The longer you stay, I spent 16 years in the legislature. And when I left, people asked, what do you miss? The friendships you make. You bond with people. Like, you probably hated leaving the house a little bit because you'd already made some good friends, hadn't you?
Well, I did, and I was working on a piece of legislation earlier today and got to go down to the House floor and was walking around. Of course, they were all ribbing me a little bit, saying that I'd gotten lost, but you know, I did. I had some great friends, and in this, you're able to meet people from every corner of the state, and able to go see parts of the state that I had never been to before. You know, through some of the Black Belt areas, on some tours that we've been on, and just going and meeting with people in their district, with other representatives and senators, and it really gives you an opportunity to get to see a lot of different things and really just get to see everything that makes Alabama such a great place to live.
Let's go back a little bit and tell folks, though, my initial question. I think most people know where Marshall County and Sand Mountain is, but tell them in the northeast part of the state, it's like right there nestled to Huntsville.
Yes, sir. We tell a lot of people we tend to be a bedroom community, at least the northern portion of Marshall County tends to be a bedroom community to Huntsville. So a lot of our workforce commutes back and forth every day to Redstone Arsenal. Lake Guntersville is probably the most well-recognized landmark. It's kind of the heart of Marshall County, right in the center, and of course our county seat. And I grew up in Arab, so I'm on Brindley Mountain, and we've got Sand Mountain with Albertville, the fire hydrant capital of the world. More fire hydrants.
Arab is?
No, Albertville. Albertville is the fire hydrant capital of the world. So.
Now there's Albertville, Arab, Guntersville.
And Boaz.
Boaz, that's right. So which one's large? What's the population of each of those towns?
Albertville is the largest.
How many behind people?
Albertville has around, I believe it's 27,000 now. And the three other cities that we have in Marshall County are all around the 8,000 to 10,000 population.
But that's so misleading, because I've said this over the years. My town of Troy, where I'm from, has about 18,000, 20,000 people. But my county hasn't got but 28,000. But Marshall's biggest town is 18,000. And y'all got over 100,000 people in Marshall County, haven't you?
We do. We have, you know, all of our city limits, of course, with Guntersville. You've got a lot of water in Guntersville, so the land area is not as large, but we do have a lot of rural areas that are not incorporated. Have a couple of towns in the town of Grant, Douglas, Asbury, Union Grove. So we have some, and actually Alabama's newest municipality was Cherokee Ridge. Cherokee Ridge was incorporated about a year ago. So we
How
have
many people in Marshall County altogether? Over 100?
Just under 100. We're about 97,000
Okay, now, but now where do you live? What town do you live in?
I live in Arab.
And Arab, what's the county seat? Gunnersville?
Gunnersville, yes,
county
sir.
seat. And Gunnersville and Arab about the same size.
About the same size, yes, sir.
Which one was one of them larger than the other one? Like years ago, was one of them grown more because they're closer to Huntsville?
I believe Gunnersville. Both of them have been similar. Gunnersville may have been a little larger for a while. Arab's had a lot of.
You're
growth.
from Arab?
Yes, sir.
Now I've known a lot of those legislators were from Albertville.
Yes, sir.
When I was in the House, I had a lot of friends from Albertville. Do you know who was in the House with me?
Who was it?
Euclid Raines.
Was he really?
You serve in the House. Euclid was the smartest guy.
He really was.
He was a wise guy. And Euclid and I were big buddies. And when we first got in the House, we met in the old House chamber over there where the governor's office was right below us. You know, that's how old I am. My first term was in 1982 in the House, and we met over in the old House chamber. Then they moved us over here to the new State House where you served. And they renovated the Highway Department building for that. And there was one horrible seat. It was right behind the pole. And Euclid said, I'll take it because I ain't making a difference. So they put poor Euclid behind the pole. Because he couldn't tell the difference, he's blind.
I believe and you probably know better than I do, but I believe he's the only blind legislator the state's ever had.
I think
completely
he is.
blind.
I think he is.
Yeah.
But I usually get so, but then he forget he was behind the pole and run into it. Euclid was getting up in age besides when he was up there. But back to the old county. Now, where was Schofield from?
His family's all from Arab. Of course, his grandfather had a car dealership there in Arab, and Senator Schofield, he ended up moving down to Gunnersville. But our family farms were actually about a mile apart from
Is
each
that
other.
right?
So, yes,
Did
sir.
you grow up on a farm?
Yeah, well, my family, they were in the chicken business. So my granddad did a little bit of everything over the years, but poultry was our number one.
You know, having roots in the county makes a lot of difference.
It does. It really does.
When I first ran, I had a great grandfather that got me votes from the grave. I'd be campaigning up in one of the northern part of my county, and if they said, Flowers, I don't know anything about you, but I sure like your great granddaddy. You know, and they vote for you because of that. You got some of the same things.
I do, and you know, on my dad's side, my granddad. Well, I mentioned Grant, very small school. They've won one state championship in any sport.
That's what your dad was a famous coach.
My granddad,
okay.
he was a basketball coach, coached at Snead State for many years, but won their state championship in basketball back in the '60s, I believe it was. So as I was going around, and when they would see Kitchens, the only question I would get, how are you related to Coach? And,
they remember that?
They still know Coach up there in Grant.
Now, you went to Arab schools and everything.
I did, yes, sir.
And then where did you go to college? Anyway?
I went down to went to Snead State, and then after with my granddad, his connection there, I was always told I could go anywhere I wanted to go as long as Snead State was in the picture first. So
what did you major in?
I majored in political science.
Did you? So you knew you liked politics.
I knew I liked politics.
Well, did you do all that high school politics, Key Club, and all that
I
stuff?
did a few things through high school and got involved in some
Did you go to
different
Boys
races.
State?
I didn't have the opportunity to do that.
Did Arab send anybody to Boys
They
State?
didn't at the time. We do now. We've gotten some students involved now, but we
So
didn't
you were in
then.
politics at high school then?
Yes, sir.
Did you play sports too?
I did. I was on the golf team, and basketball had been a part of my family, and played basketball for a while. And I realized that golf was I didn't have the speed or the talent for basketball, so golf was my number one sport.
Now, you're not a lawyer by profession, are you?
I'm not, no,
Are
sir.
you in the insurance or banking business?
I'm in the insurance.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Property and casualty?
Yes, sir. We've got an independent agency there in Arab.
Is it, did you ever get to know Joe Fuller well?
I did, yes, sir.
He carried the independent insurance agency.
He did, and I was actually honored. There is a legislative award that's given out.
The Hawk Award?
The Hawk Award. So I've got a hawk sitting in my office
I
after
see a
him.
picture of Fuller, me and Fuller sitting at the Bright Star. We were best friends, and we had a picture made at the Bright Star. I saw it this morning before I left, yesterday morning, and we were sitting there having a dinner at the Bright Star in Bessemer. He loved to go there, I do too, and but I spoke at his funeral. I was known as Paul Bear, but I spoke. He had it at that big old Baptist church, First Baptist Church in downtown Birmingham, and old Joe was a character, wasn't he?
Yes, sir. He sure was.
So you remembered him?
I do. I remember him. Yes, sir.
Well, I looked over that group of independent insurance agents. I said, I know y'all miss him, but then y'all really gonna miss him politically.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
He was that. So you came right on back and went. Was your family already in the insurance business?
No, sir. I got into coaching,
your
followed in my
granddaddy?
family's footsteps, and
Had your daddy coached too?
He's still the varsity girls basketball coach at Arab High
Arab,
School.
uh-huh.
So, and I'll give him a little plug because last year they made it to the Final Four. So he's been coaching for all these years, and that was his first trip to the Final Four. They were state runner-up last year, so proud of him for that.
Wes, did you see the numbers that Caitlin Clark
Oh, my
brought in on
goodness.
television? Do you know that there were more people watching the women's national championship basketball game than the NBA finals or the men's basketball?
It was
Did you-
really
did you see
unbelievable.
that?
Yes, sir. And I watched those games too. She was a phenomenal athlete.
And she's got a great personality.
She does.
I was watching the McAfee show this morning, or somewhere I was sitting, and I was eating lunch and watching the McAfee show in the background, and she came on there, and she's just so personable, and not a brash way, but a confident way.
Yes, sir. And was just the #1 overall pick too in the WNBA draft.
What are they going to pay her? Did they say what they're going to pay her?
I don't know. You know, the WNBA, they have some salary caps. I saw some numbers, but I don't know with some of her endorsement deals.
Has your granddaddy passed away now?
No, sir. Now, my mom's dad has, but my dad's still around, and you can still find him in gyms all across the state. He still likes to go watch basketball.
But has your daddy always coached women's basketball?
He's coached a little bit of both. He coached at Brewer High School there in Morgan County. Was coaching there actually around the time I was born.
I knew Governor Brewer.
Did you really?
I was a page for him.
Really?
When I was a young boy, he was Speaker of the House. I loved Albert Brewer as much as anything.
Yes, sir. Well, they have a high school there in Morgan County.
Need to be named after him. He
pretty
would
large
have won
school.
the 70 governor's race, but George Wallace beat him with that race issue.
Yes, sir.
It was a horrible. Have you read about that race? You're not old enough to remember it.
I don't remember that
What
one.
year were you born?
I was born in '89. That was a few years before
that
me.
70 governor's race was brutal.
Yes, sir.
It was have you read and heard about it?
Yes, sir.
How
Yes,
Wallace pulled that race card and
Yes, sir.
everything in 1970. But Albert Brewer deserves a high school name for him. So your daddy coached over there at Brewer in Decatur.
Yes, sir.
So Morgan joins you.
Morgan County's right down
Don't
the road.
you have part of Blunt, don't you?
Northern Blunt County, and then Southern Madison County. So Owens Crossroads, New Hope. Actually, I tell people, I really believe that this Senate district is probably the most diverse in the state because you go from the very rural areas of Northern Blunt County, the farmland. You have all of Marshall County, and then
All of
Redstone,
Marshall's in it.
all of Marshall, and then you have Redstone Arsenal, the Space and Rocket
You
Center.
actually go get get the center. You get all the way
to 565. All of Redstone Arsenal lies in this Senate district. So
I remember Schofield telling me that.
yeah, it's a very diverse
Schofield
district.
wanted that.
Yes.
He wanted that for some reason.
Well, and I think it makes a lot of sense because we do, like I mentioned earlier, we have so many people that commute back and forth, and a lot of contractors, defense contractors, business owners that
They live
have
on
a business.
nice houses out in the country.
They do. They live in Arab. They'll have a country home or even a lake house in Gunnersville, and they commute back and forth every day. So we have quite a few people that their business, even just their employers based out of Huntsville, but call Marshall County home. So it makes a lot of sense to have those two connected together.
Wes, now when you ran for the House in what year?
2018.
And won your first race.
Yes,
didn't
sir.
you? And how old are you now?
I'm 35 now.
So you were just turning 30.
Yes, sir.
You just turned. That's how old I was when I went to the House.
I was
in 82.
actually a unique story. I'd always said I've been to 49 of the 50 states, and Hawaii is the only state I haven't been to. So I was going to go to Hawaii on my 30th birthday. That was going to be my 30th
You
birthday
like to
trip.
travel?
I like to travel, and with basketball, it took me a lot of places. But I started my first session the day after my 30th birthday, so I didn't get to go to Hawaii. I figured running for office and being down here in Montgomery, that trumped that. So.
You won in 2 so you only had one governor.
Yes, sir.
Has been governor the whole time.
Yes, sir, she has.
In 28, so she actually moved over there in about 2016.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
In Bentley, half of Bentley's term. So when you're finishing your first term, you were beginning your second term, and this Senate seat came
Yes,
open.
sir. Yeah.
So you ran in 18 and were sworn in by the time you were 30 years old. Well, you already in the insurance business.
Yes, sir.
That's why you made your living.
Yes.
And so you served that one term. What committees were you on in the House?
I was on quite a few. Most recently, I was on the Rules Committee. I'd been
Who
elected.
chaired rules last time?
Well, Joe Lovern was our current chair, and then Mike Jones was
Mike,
the,
well, that's right. He
yes.
was the first full quadrennium.
Yes.
So now, did you have a House? Did you have any opposition? 2022 House race?
I did. I had one Democrat opposition. Didn't have a primary opposition in the second round.
What is the House seat you came from? What number and what is it? Arab and what else?
Arab, Gunnersville, Grant. It's northern Marshall County.
You stayed in Marshall
I
totally
did, yes,
for
sir.
that House seat.
Yes, sir. And when I was elected in 18, it actually had a portion of DeKalb County and Blount County. But after redistricting with our population numbers in Marshall
Yeah,
County,
you kept it all
we
in
now
Marshall.
have 2 House seats.
So, and then
that
when
are
you
full
first
in.
ran 18, you went over and got a sliver of Blount
Yes, sir.
and a sliver of DeKalb.
Yes, sir.
But then y'all changed it up because you had a population to keep it all
Yes, sir.
in
All
that
in
made
the county.
sense.
Yes, sir.
Because you don't want to be in their local legislation.
That's right. Well, in Marshall County, we actually had, at the time we were about, I'm wanting to say closer to 90,000, but we had 5 House members that represented a portion.
They were coming in there
of
and
Marshall
taking your
County.
people out of that.
They were. They
So you, how many?
just
were you
100
the
or
only
so
home
here.
resident House member then?
We had 2. Kerry Rich.
That's
who
right. I remember. I
you,
served with
you
Kerry.
served with Kerry.
Uh-huh.
One of his multiple stints down here. We,
Yeah, when he first came.
When Kerry was retiring,
He had
last
radio
year,
stations.
He
then.
did, yeah, and still has a radio voice. But when Kerry was retiring last year, I kind of got to rib him a little bit because I told him that he was the representative for the House seat that I was in when I was born. So he was my representative when I was born. And then
What year were you born?
In '89.
Yeah, see, man, I've been in the House 7 years when you were born. God, I feel old. And I think Richard's older than I am. I think he was older than me because he came, but he and I were there together. You know who else was from Coleman? Well, Lloyd Coleman was from Marshall
Yes, sir.
County.
He was from there in Arab.
Did you know Lloyd?
I did. Yes, sir.
He's died, hadn't he?
Yes, sir.
And Euclid was from there,
Yeah,
Boaz.
From Albertville area over there.
Does
so.
Boaz? I don't have a representative. Boaz ought to do that.
No, Brock Colvin. He lives in Albertville, and so he represents the Boaz, Douglas, and Albertville area. And Boaz again. That's where my grandparents still live on my dad's side.
Do you know, Wes, that when I first started writing this column, I write 20 years ago, I really wanted to be in Marshall County, and some old guy named Harvey owned a paper there, one of those towns.
The Advertiser Gleam, I believe.
And what town was that in?
That's in Gunnersville.
Gunnersville. And then the Sand Mountain Reporter's in Albertville.
Yes, sir.
I'm in the Sand Mountain Reporter, and I was the first out of Marshall County had a provincial reputation that if you weren't from there, they didn't have nothing to do with you. I mean, it was considered like, we got our own area here. They only had local columnists, and Ben Charette came over. He'd been in the newspaper business for years, and he brought me in the Sand Mountain Reporter. I may still be the only outside person. I bet you folks in Albertville think I live in Albertville.
Well, they might. We'll gladly take you up in Albertville if you want to come up
I
to
have
the Great
spoken
White
to that
North.
Rotary Club several times.
Yes, sir. They've got a great Rotary Club.
I've been there several times, that Albertville Rotary Club. But anyway, back to your stuff. You in the House in 18, 22, you at 35, you elected to the thing. Then the Senate seat, the Schofield seat comes open, and the boy you mentioned, Brock Colvin, you beating that thing, is another young guy. And I have written this, I don't know if I've written it or not, but I've told people this, that I said Marshall County's become the new Barber County of this state. I mean, you got the Lieutenant Governor, you got the Attorney General Ainsworth, Marshall, and then I would go down and I would say, I think I wrote this, that then you've got these 2 superstar legislators that are young and attractive and stellar superstar potential in Wes Kitchens and Brock Colvin. And then so I said, something's going to have to happen along the way. Marshall and Ainsworth's going to have to tie up somewhere along the line, and one of them's going to prevail. And those 2 young boys, Kitchen and Colvin, well, you disposed of Colvin. You got him out of the way. Now, Marshall and Ainsworth are going to have to settle this score. They may wind up settling this score somewhere. eventually.
I'll leave that one for you to, to discuss. But no, we do. We're very fortunate and have had great people in our representation. And I replaced Will Ainsworth in his. He was in my House seat. So.
Yeah.
And Senator Schofield, of course, he was our majority leader. So we were very blessed with the position we were in Marshall County, and with Clay and with Will and with our Attorney General Steve Marshall. So we got this one out of the way. So we'll see what
people
happens
think that Marshall County, but they ain't got nothing to do with Steve Marshall's name.
I know.
It wasn't named nothing. People have always thought over the years that I wrote this. I bet you half the people think Shelby County's named Shelby after Richard Shelby.
There might be. I know. I've had people ask about Marshall County, what his connection is.
I guarantee you. They say, well, Steve Marshall from Marshall County. They think, well, his grandfather started that county.
He founded the county, yeah.
That's probably the assumption.
Yes, sir.
But it ain't true. I mean, that's not the case. Marshall County's been a county before Alabama was a state almost, wasn't it?
I believe so, close to it. We had, back through some of the territorial maps, I think, with Blount County and some of those areas that kind of, and some Creek land, some Cherokee land that were up through there. So, but we've been a county for quite a while.
You won that special election, won it without a runoff.
I did.
55%, and against two people. Colvin was in there, and then, so you're now in the state Senate at 35 after serving 5 years in the House. And you didn't automatically get Schofield's committees, though.
No, sir.
It ain't like, people think that. Do you know the guy, when I was in the House, Taylor Harper from Grand Bay was chairman of Ways and Means, and somebody beat him, upset him. And they were so naive, they walked in there and assumed they were going to be chairman of Ways and Means. They'd beaten Taylor Harper because they actually went in the office and sat down and said, I guess this is my office now. That's exactly the way it works, isn't it?
I knew my office would probably be at the end of the hall, which it is, and I knew my committees would not match up with the former majority leader's committees, but I have been very blessed, and I serve on Banking and Insurance Committee.
Which is good for things.
It is. The Ag Committee, which again is good for our area back home with our agriculture, and we've got a lot of poultry and poultry processing up there. Serve on Children's and Youth Health, which is, I was on the Health Committee in the House, and then also serve on Energy and Transportation.
Wes, do you know that I've known this because I know Alabama, that your area is one of the most prominent poultry places if not in the state, but maybe if not the country. It was known that Marshall, Blount, all through Sand Mountain was really big in the chicken business and poultry business. I never associated Mobile and the docks with Sand Mountain, and I thought, well, then KI came with that road and infrastructure. Were you in the House with that?
I was, yes, sir.
Well, the first ones to sign on to that program were Greg Reed, Schofield, and Livingston. And I asked every one of them, I said, well, I understand why the Mobile people are so fired up about well, anyway, I assumed they were all three were kind of in leadership positions. So I thought, well, they've got to support Ivy's thing, and they'll get some good roads out of it. But to every one of those three boys I mentioned, Reed, Livingston, and Schofield, told me, says, Flowers, do you know who the biggest user of that damn Port Mobile is? Is our poultry farmers. And Reed says the coal and his was the biggest thing too. Did you know that when did you vote for that for the same reason?
Yes, sir. I mean that made sense for us. Of course, we've got the Tennessee River, so all the grain that comes in and out, and for the feed mills that we have. But our poultry industry, there's a lot of poultry products that are shipped that come from Marshall County right down to the port, and it opens it up all the way to Asia.
You knew that, didn't you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's a very big market. The Asian market is very big with our poultry industry.
Do you know tell you what a great Senator Richard Shelby was? He and I were real good friends, and we would have dinner together sometimes in Birmingham at Highlands, and he would call me at the spur of the moment. Ann Caldwell would call me and say, he wants to have some dinner with you. Can you meet him? I said, sure. And one night we were cutting up, and then he got real serious. This is about 7 or 8 years ago, before he was chairman of appropriations. But he knew he was going to be chairman of appropriations. So that port in Mobile, I know some of the Rebuild Alabama money went in there, but most of that money came from Washington.
It did, you know, a
for
small
Shelby.
portion really from the state. The majority of that came from
Shelby did
Richard
that.
Shelby.
It did. And but he sat there, Wes, and told me, he says, this is how farsightful he was. He said, before I retire, I'm going to deepen and widen that port. It's a shame. He said, our automobiles made in Tuscaloosa and Montgomery and Lincoln and Honda cannot be shipped through that port. And he said, you won't believe how much of our agriculture can't either. And he said, they have to go to Savannah. And he doggone sure did it.
And did you know, I mean, you probably saw just a few weeks ago, the report came out that Alabama was the #1 auto exporter in the entire country.
It is.
And it's that type of vision right there that helped create that, to open that port up. You know, we've got a lot of auto suppliers, of course, Toyota Mazda there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right there in the Huntsville area. But we've got a lot of the suppliers. You know, if you've got a Honda, I think it's a Honda Odyssey van, the headrest and armrest are made in Arab. I passed there
right?
Not a mile from my house. Their headrest and armrest are made right there. So, you know, you really think about the major factories that put the vehicles together, but there's a whole lot of factories all around the state that supply those, and it affects all of them.
People don't realize, I mean, what Shelby's done for Huntsville and that rest on Arsenal. It would not have been what it is without his support.
Absolutely, and it keeps growing every day. Of course, the FBI headquarters that are coming in.
He brought it there.
He did.
He was totally the reason.
He was, and that building is looking fantastic, and people are already moving in, getting ready for the jobs that are following. So it's going to be a big driver for all of North Alabama, especially.
Well, you're going to be a big driver for North Alabama. You're going to be a real leader up there. Already are. At 35 years old, y'all. Y'all may be looking at the future governor here. Wes Kitchens is a 35-year-old first-term state senator who has 5 years in the state house under his belt from Marshall County, and he came over here from the Senate today to take time to be on our program. They're finishing up their last few days in the Senate, and we appreciate Senator Kitchens doing that. And we thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune in again next week for Alabama Politics, and thank you, Senator Kitchens, for being on our show again.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.